Welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast for leaders of growing restaurant companies looking to take their businesses to the next level. In nearly 2 decades covering restaurants, I've gained access to some of this industry's most influential decision makers, and I'm letting you in on the conversations. In today's episode, you'll hear from the co-founder of a fast casual concept that changed up its core menu in a play to build guest frequency, and you'll find out why sometimes you've got to swing for the fences in order to grow your business. Seth Cohen is the co-founder of Sweetfin, a Los Angeles-based fast casual that launched a decade ago as one of the first players in the Poké category. Sweetfin has grown to 15 locations in Southern California, but in order to unlock more growth, the leadership team decided that the core menu needed a facelift. As Seth explains in this interview, Poké is still a big hit at Sweetfin restaurants, but he and his partners felt like they needed to widen the aperture of the menu a little bit to secure new guests and more frequent visits. Enter Michelin-starred chef Daniel Patterson. Chef Daniel was recruited to develop new menu items for Sweetfin, and the result was a line of new warm bowls that feature cooked proteins, as well as new salads and vegetable sides. The new menu, which leans into Sweetfin's identity as a California Asian-inspired concept, debuted at one location earlier this year, and Seth joined the podcast to talk about why the brand felt like it needed to expand beyond Poké and which metrics he's watching to see if it's a success. In this conversation, you will learn more about why the era of extremely focused menus may be over, why your menu needs to have a point of view, and why all brand evolution must be filtered through your core values. If you learned something from this episode, go follow Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave some feedback. It is the best way to get those lessons to a fellow restaurant leader. Jumping now into my interview with Sweetfin co-founder Seth Cohen. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, sitting down with Seth Cohen, the co-founder of Sweetfin. Seth, how you doing?
Doing great. Good to see you as always, Sam.
Likewise. Seth, you've had a big year already. You guys did something pretty significant to the brand, and that's why we're talking. We're going to get into it. But, and you've been on the pod before, so I don't think I need to do an intro of you and Sweetfin, but in case people didn't catch that episode, which has probably been a couple of years now, tell us a little bit briefly about Sweetfin as a brand, how it got started, what this brand is all about.
Sure. So thanks again for having me. It's good to see you again. Sweetfin was started, believe it or not, 10 years ago. And when we started 10 years ago, I can confidently say that we were the pioneers of a category that didn't exist, and it was Poké. And so for the last 10 years, what we've talked about from a concept standpoint is being a chef-driven, California-inspired Poké concept. And over the last 10 years, we've had the opportunity to grow our brand and our footprint in Southern California. We have 15 locations across Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego. And our brand mission from day one has been to fuel life through freshness. And so that's really important for us, not only in terms of the type of food that we're serving, fresh food, but also the ability to fuel our guests and to really create a culinary experience that is exciting and innovative, but makes people feel good as well. And so over the last 10 years, we've innovated a little bit. We've added some new menu items. We've had the opportunity to collaborate with some incredible chefs and media personalities. But as you so eloquently said, we made a big shift early this year, about a week ago. We partnered with a 2 Michelin star chef named Daniel Patterson. Really, we believe this collaboration and partnership with Daniel is really just sort of an evolution or a continuation of our chef-driven mentality that we've had from day one. And we brought a whole new side to our menu. So we now have these delicious warm bowls, salads with new warm proteins, and also these amazing new signature vegetable sides that we're doing in an oven. And so we feel like this new concept with Daniel is really not a pivot, but an evolution of what Sweetfin is. It's still California cuisine with Asian influence, 100% gluten-free. It's super clean and healthy, a lot of lean proteins, grains, vegetables, sauces that don't include any seed oils. But at the same time, it has allowed us to open up our concept to a whole new set of guests. And also, we feel like it's going to give us the ability to increase the frequency with our current guests. We still have Poké on the menu. It's still a main part of our concept, our core competency. But I think sort of the new menu is really the perfect balanced menu that will allow our guests to come in more often.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that the poke of it all, because as you said, when you guys opened 10 years ago, nobody, I mean, certainly nobody outside of California and Hawaii really knew what poke was. But you guys were really kind of out ahead of this category, and then it exploded, and suddenly poke was everywhere. And as with a lot of, trends, it popped, and then in a lot of parts of America, it started, the demand for it started to come down. But I think of anywhere, California probably remained pretty high. But I'm curious from your opinion, the demand for poke, has it waned? What's been the sort of state of poke as a category in these 10 years and in the evolution of it?
Yeah, exactly what you said. We started a trend. We didn't want to start a trend. It just happened to become a trend. And the category completely blew up, both in a positive way, positive in that the consumers were educated very quickly about what this new category was. On the negative side, you had a lot of operators come in that maybe didn't have business, operating in the category, or thought that operating the category would be a lot easier than it truly is. I mean, we're dealing with a highly perishable item, a fresh item, a raw fish that is extremely sensitive. And so, even though it's a simple preparation, I would say from a culinary standpoint, you have to have very high levels of execution and standards. Um, that being said, despite the fact that we did see, I would say a reduction in the poke category, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or I would better categorize it as a correction. The category is continuing to grow, and it's not only growing in the U.S.; it's growing internationally. One thing that always got us really excited about the poke category is that it's so similar in flavor profile to sushi. We felt like or we feel like it's a more affordable, more efficient way to enjoy the familiar flavors of sushi. And so that sort of idea is not going away. And
Mhm.
even in what we would call secondary or tertiary markets in the U.S., the growth continues. Now, does there need to be 30 different poke concepts in any given city? Probably not. But we do believe in the longevity of the category, and that longevity can be backed up by some good statistics. Not only looking at sort of the growth rate of poke as a whole, but also if you look under the hood at some of the third party delivery platforms, DoorDash and Uber and Postmates, et cetera. Poke is a category that still performs incredibly well across almost all markets.
Mhm.
So it is a category that isn't going anywhere. I believe it's probably one of the top 10 sort of categories of food that people are eating, especially the younger generation, as you could say. But there had to be some sort of correction. And I do think
Mhm.
brands, especially in the category, need to continue to evolve around the category and sort of look at what consumers are asking for, and make some changes.
Yeah, I mean, I especially think about like the health movement of today. Like poke fits into so many of the trends in lifestyle today, which is eating healthier, eating fresher. Seafood in general, I think, is probably having a moment. And so to your point, like whether it's sushi, whether it's poke, whatever, like there's always going to be that demand there. And I like how you said that there was a bit of a correction to the saturation that happened in this category. But um, I'm curious what some of the impetus was for this new evolution to the brand, because at some point, and I want to get into talking about some of the sort of macro factors affecting the business, because you guys have had a lot of that too, as a business based in LA, and just what's gone on in the last 5 6 years. Um, but um, but there must have been a moment where you were looking at numbers and realizing like something has to give. What was that impetus that sent you in this direction?
I think the biggest impetus was this realization that we had a lot of sweet fans, and those are our loyal guests, and but those guests, the frequency that they were visiting was not enough to justify, having more than a dozen locations in a city.
Hmm.
And so, what we really thought about was what does a Sweetfin look like 10 years later if we were to take all of our learnings from 2015 to 2025, what does this concept look like, and what does the consumer want? Because the consumer has changed. There was a time, I think 10 years ago, where being very niche was sort of the way to go in fast casual. Sweet Green was just focused on salads. Mendocino Farms was really just focused on sandwiches. Sweetfin was just focused on Poké. And so that worked for a while, and then it didn't work. And I think a lot of that is because consumers want more flexibility in the way that they're eating. And to have a menu that is very particular and specific really puts you at a disadvantage. Now, the flip side of that is you can't be everything to everyone, and you do need to have a point of view, not only from a culinary side, but from a brand side.
Hmm.
And so we spent a lot of time over the last year thinking about, well, what does that look like? Um, we don't want to pivot. We want to evolve. And I think that's a very important, distinction amongst the two words. What does an evolution look like? We
Mm.
still want to be a California concept that has a lot of Asian influence. That's what we've always been from day one. When we started Sweetfin, in our sort of story, we were very clear to say we are not Hawaiian poke. We are something different.
Hmm.
And so we felt like that gave us the liberty to sort of evolve outside of the poke bowl. In addition, we changed our name five or 6 years ago away from Sweetfin Poke to Sweetfin. Again, giving us the ability to be a little bit more flexible. Um, and so we took all of the familiar flavors of what Sweetfin currently is. There's a very clear through line across all of our dishes now, whether it's flavor combinations of yuzu and chili and soy and miso, and put them in these, I would call them new plates or bowls, whatever you want, however you want to categorize them,
Hmm.
that are satiating and healthy and delicious, that allow you to come to Sweetfin on a Monday and get a crispy rice salad with roasted miso salmon. And then if you want to come back on a Wednesday, you can get your spicy tuna bowl. But if you want to, do a post-workout lunch and get a steak bowl on a Saturday, you can do that as well. Again, with a very similar through line and flavors. And so that seemed like the smart thing to do. And that's where we're seeing fast casual headed. Everyone is playing in each other's sandbox. You look at Kava, they've gotten into pitas and sandwiches. Sweet Green, of course, had their big push to protein plates, and now they're evolving even more. It's the market is way too competitive, especially when you factor in Southern California. I would say the rise of the grocery store, because a grocery store coming in and really doing a great job with prepared foods. And it's easier than ever to take your phone out, order from a grocery store, order from a fast casual, order from full service. Full service never used to be on the delivery apps. Order from a ghost concept. I mean, you could, the competition is endless. So if you're not able or willing to evolve with the times, we felt like our top line revenue would just flatline. And if
Mm.
you're not, and if you flatline the way costs are moving, you don't exist. And so that was the true sort of thought process and impetus around making this change.
It's fascinating that you bring up that idea of all the fast casuals playing in each other's sandbox because, if we took a step back and look at the broader fast casual category, there's a lot of conversation right now about what's happened to fast casual because the sales trends are certainly not what they used to be. But it's fascinating because I actually saw this last week. I was with my colleagues from Technomic looking at some of these numbers, excuse me, and they were showing how, for 10 years, fast casual was double digit comps or more and that's come down to I think last year was something like 5% as a category, which is still outpacing most other categories. It's still growing. Fast casual is still very, very popular, but you see a Chipotle and a Sweet Green and some others that are maybe hitting some maturation issues. And I guess what that makes me wonder for another fast casual leader is like what's sort of the end game here, as I think all these brands, to your point, are starting to play in each other's sandboxes, coming back down to earth a little bit. What will be the natural sort of evolution of the fast casual category in the coming 3 or 5 years?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer, but what I do know is exactly what the data is telling you. Fast casual is continuing to grow because the consumer still wants to eat or be able to order high quality food at a reasonable price point in a relatively casual environment. And a lot of the fast casual restaurants have really focused on high quality, I would say high quality ingredients, high quality sourcing, big flavor, but also really focusing on health and wellness. And that trend is going nowhere. And what the end game is, I don't know. I think there's probably, maybe there needs to be a sort of recalibration or re-underwriting of what sort of growth looks like, not only for smaller brands but for the larger ones.
Mhm.
Where do they top out? I think brands are starting to really think about ways in which they could drive additional revenue outside of the four walls of the restaurant. So focusing on catering, events. You're seeing a lot of the fast casual concepts now talk about international growth. You never heard, a Chipotle or a Jersey Mike's talk about, growing internationally now because, in my opinion, as you said, there's a ceiling for growth. There's only so many fast casual restaurants that can exist. And again, when a lot of the demand for fast casual is being driven now by third party delivery apps, those apps are getting even more saturated. And the real tailwind behind that was COVID, when you basically onboarded every single restaurant in America to a delivery app because they were forced to. So you basically doubled the supply or doubled the inventory, or maybe even more, probably way more than that actually, with the ghost concepts, the inventory of available restaurants on these platforms. And there's a limit to how many people are willing to order, and so it makes for a challenging growth environment for sure. And from a business standpoint, I think that's been clearly reflected in the stock prices of a lot of the fast casual companies. It's a full re-underwriting of growth and multiples and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, and I think all of that's true, and to add to that, I think the unfortunate reality is we're going to see a lot of closures across the entire industry, but probably in the fast casual category too, because the natural end game could simply be there will be winners and there will be losers, and if you are not adapting and evolving, you're not going to be a winner of this category. So to that point, you guys have chosen to evolve, to adapt, because you're going to be on the winner side of that maturation that the fast casual category is doing. I love what you've said here about kind of leaning into Californian and Asian. I mean, that's where sushi exploded, right? I mean, sushi took off in the 90s in California. For God's sake, there's a California roll because like those flavors pair so well together. So you guys have clearly taken a note out of that playbook. You've mentioned some of those other ingredients already on your menu that you're incorporating. I mean, tell me about the potential in kind of embracing these two types of cuisine, one of which is very clearly divine. The other one is a little bit more hazy in California, but I think people kind of know it when they see it. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I say California, immediately I think of two things. I think of availability of produce and having a menu that is really plentiful in terms of really fruits and vegetables. That's produce forward. Of course, we love our protein, but I also think about a lifestyle aspect. And the California, despite the bad press that California has had as of late, California is a global brand. And it will continue to be a global brand. And it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle where people prioritize their health, their wellness. They care about what they're putting in their bodies, and so that's how we, created these new dishes with those sort of two thoughts in mind. Dishes that are very vegetable forward, dishes that really have this, I think, wonderful combination of health, but also a lot of flavor and indulgence. And you can have both at the same time. And I think that's the most exciting thing about this new menu and the feedback that we've had is, or some of the feedback, people saying, wow, this is a lot of flavor, or this is really filling, but I don't feel gross after eating it, or it's really filling, but it's not greasy. And so I think that's really important. We truly want to create food that makes people feel great and perform better. And I think I know that we've successfully done that with this new menu. So, in terms of growth potential, I get excited because we're serving such a small community in Southern California.
Hmm.
But the lifestyle and the flavor combinations that we're putting out truly can sit anywhere, and I really believe that. And so, we're not even thinking about, where are we going to open next? Is it New York or Nashville? It's really just focusing on the operations of executing these new dishes, rolling them out to our existing locations, and then growth will follow.
Hmm.
Um, and we do believe, in terms of sort of the trajectory of the new menu, that our goal is to have a 50-50 product mix with our Poké and this new menu, because again, we don't want to abandon Poké. I've spent a lot of times in our stores over the last couple months, and people are still fanatical about our bowls. They're still delicious. Nothing's changed there. But I think if we can get to a P mix that's 50-50, the frequency of our guests will increase significantly.
Seems like there could be an opportunity here to build out dinner day part too. That poke may be more of a lunch thing. The new items may be more of a dinner thing.
Yeah, we were always fortunate, in our, I would say, day mix. It was probably 60-40 lunch to dinner. But some of our stores are closer to 50-50, and certainly I think this is going to afford us the opportunity to do a lot more dinner sales. And from a catering standpoint, we haven't even sort of announced it or brought it to market, but like, our catering business has been growing like crazy. That's one of the true growth drivers in Southern California, which is amazing. With what I believe is a sort of, it's a differentiated but limited menu with what we have. Layering on this new aspect of, these warm bowls, again, that have these unique flavors that are really uniquely Sweetfin, opens up a whole new growth opportunity for us. And we've spoken to a couple clients that we work with, and they're totally, you know, excited about it. So that's something that we're going to be rolling out very soon as well.
Cool. I'm gonna kind of dig into this idea of the brand evolution. I love how you say it's like more of an evolution than it is a pivot. But I imagine there's other brands out there that they're like realizing, wow, we need to make a change. We need to evolve. Where to start? Because what you've done, I mean, when you think about the possible addition of SKUs, the possible addition of equipment, the changing in your training modules, I mean, there's so many, there's a domino effect here that happens when you want to make a brand evolution like what you've done that could be intimidating. When you think about that, and for those who are listening who might be in the same position as you, how do you start? How much of an evolution is possible within the parameters of the fact that you're still running your business day to day?
Yeah, I mean, evolving while operating and not closing created its own set of issues, which is for another podcast. But I think this is such like a lame cliche answer, but it's the truth. You have to start with the guest. We talked to a lot of our guests. We looked at a lot of data, and the data and the guests said the same thing. People love the brand. They love the flavors of Sweetfin, but they don't always want to eat raw. Okay, so if that is the problem we're solving for, you know, if you could clearly define the problem, it makes it a lot easier to solve. So we knew that, okay, we don't want to pivot away from poke. They still love poke. They still love our flavors, so we don't want to mess with our flavors, but they do want more ways to eat Sweetfin. And so that was a very, clearly solvable, definable problem for us. I think you have to be careful when evolving, that you don't want to jump on another trend. You don't want to be trend chasers. Again, like I said, the beginning of the podcast, be everything to everyone, and we're okay with that. But throughout the process, we really thought about what are our core values, what's important to Sweetfin, and what do we need to change in order to be more successful. And then every sort of decision funneled through that lens. So we knew, okay, we have always been a gluten-free concept. That's something that's really important to us. We need to make sure the concept continues to be gluten-free. Our mission is to fuel life through freshness. We care about having products that are healthy. We need to make sure that our bowl is are in line with sort of our health leaning angle. We care about sustainability. So when we're sourcing our new products, let's make sure to get our chicken that's organic from Petaluma Farms, and again, making those sort of decisions. So I think every decision you have to make while evolving needs to tie back into the core values, because it's easy just to evolve, and then you have this sort of disconnection between what you originally started with and what the end product is. And we tried to make sure that there was a tight narrative around the evolution, not only in the way that we were communicating it, but also the way in which we were presenting it to our guests. And so there's a very clear through line in every single aspect, from packaging, sourcing, flavor, on and on and on. Yes, this is Sweetfin. This will continue to be Sweetfin, but this is a better Sweetfin.
Yeah. All right, so I want to get into the Daniel Patterson part of this, partnering with him, a chef of his incredible caliber, as you mentioned, Michelin star chef. You guys, this is not so uncommon for you, though. You launched the brand with a chef partner, if I remember correctly, with Chef Dakota. You've had chefs as part of this throughout your history, and you've also had partnerships with a lot of influencers. You guys kind of have this as a strength of yours, where you partner with other personalities to support the business. But with this, you're asking a lot of Chef Daniel to, this is a big brand evolution. You hired the big guns for this. Tell me about that piece of it. Why was somebody of his caliber so important to be a part of this brand evolution?
Exactly what you said from the beginning. Our original tagline was Sweetfin is a chef driven concept. And that was before that terminology, everyone used it. That was 11 years ago or 12 years ago when we wrote the initial branding documents. We knew that if we were going to start a concept in fast casual, it always needed to be rooted in culinary. We partnered with Dakota Weiss. At the time, she had just finished filming Top Chef. She had an amazing pedigree. She was nominated for a James Beard Award. Having her at the helm and really put in the systems of a sort of high-end restaurant into a fast casual environment separated us from the beginning. Now, and then through the evolution of the brand, again, as you said, we've worked with some of the top chefs in the country, whether it's, Antonio LaFossa, Richard Blais, Shirley Chung, the list goes on, probably 15 different top chefs to create menu items. And one of the, most exciting pieces of feedback that I received when we originally opened Sweetfin in 2015 was that chefs love to eat Sweetfin. Like, if you ask the chef, hey, where do you like to eat on your day off? They would come to Sweetfin. And so that was a really sort of great, pat on the back in terms of us catering to a community that cares about flavor. And we've always cared about having strong culinary partners, because that's a key differentiator for the brand. Now, when we were looking at this evolution, we started to dig in and network with our community of friends in the hospitality industry. And Daniel's name came up, and we got introduced to Daniel. And obviously his pedigree, speaks for him. Someone who earned 2 Michelin stars at his restaurant in San Francisco, Qua, someone who won a James Beard Award for Best Chef, someone who was not only nominated, but won Food and Wine magazine's Best Chef as well, Best New Chef. And if you look at that list, it's the who's who globally: Rene Redzepi, Nancy Silverton, and the list goes on and on. It's, he has an incredible pedigree. But what really attracted us to Daniel, and I think what Daniel was attracted to with Sweetfin, was the fact that the Sweetfin brand fits within his lifestyle. He cares about what he puts in his body. He's very into fitness. The way he cooks is very, I would say, vegetable forward, but with a lot of flavor. He's cooked in California essentially his whole life. And so it was a perfect, match, I would say. And being able to bring in a multiple Michelin starred chef, their discipline into our restaurants really leveled up our team. Like, the standards that he came in with is way above everything that we've ever done, whether it's the way we're sourcing product, the way we're handling product, the way we're inspecting product when it comes in, the cleanliness of our restaurants. To be able to bring that sort of talent, not only from a recipe development standpoint, but also a standard standpoint, was a once in a lifetime opportunity for us. And so we feel like it's taken our standards to a whole nother level. he created a menu that it's not fancy, it's not fussy, it's not just because he has this resume that has all the accolades that he has doesn't necessarily mean that he had to create a menu that is of Michelin sort of quality. We're not putting we're not plating our noodles with tweezers, but what he was able to successfully do was to create a menu that is replicable. It is coming out great. The consistency is fantastic. The proteins are cooked amazingly, and the flavor is top notch. So we're really happy with the way that it's turned out so far.
Yeah. All right. So Rollout, you've got this now in one location. As you mentioned, though, you have 15. So I'm curious.
We did the easy part. We did the easy.
Yeah. The hard part comes next.
Yeah.
Tell me, I mean, because obviously I'm sure you never thought to yourself, let's just go for all 15 at once and see how it goes. I mean, you have to sort of wade into the waters here, but tell me about the plan for rolling out. And also, what are some KPIs you're looking for at the one location that has this new menu?
So we're hoping to roll out Venice, our Abbot Kinney location, in the next month, and then slowly but surely roll out the other locations. When we think about rolling this out, I'm very cognizant of the fact that this is a big change for our guests, and it's going to take a lot of time and effort to get new guests to want to try this new product. And so that ultimately leads to this sort of situation where you have similar to a new restaurant opening. You have one chance. Like, you have to nail it. The food needs to be excellent and people need to want to order again, or the whole project is really sort of a waste of time. And so that's why we're taking our time to roll it out, because we want to make sure that each location is operating at the standards of Sweetfin and at the standards of Daniel. In terms of the KPIs, I mean, for us, there's a couple. Number one, guest frequency. Can we get our existing guests to come back to Sweetfin more frequently? Our goal was to increase guest frequency by 30%. New customers, can we open up the concept to a whole new addressable market? I think the answer is yes, but we'll see in the data very soon. And then, of course, top line. We want to grow top line through those two vehicles: new guests and existing guests. The other sort of catering, that's all going to come. We're going to be able to grow that. That's going to be great. But those are the two things. And we're, I would say, pretty good operators in terms of understanding our costs and the cost structure, and we'll figure that out. There's not a lot of concern there, but really the driver for the project is top line.
For take a step back a little bit, I mentioned earlier some of the macro factors affecting business. I mean, again, to think about, obviously went through COVID. You guys also, I know, got really hit hard by the fires last year. And that's not just last year. Obviously, it's an ongoing issue for all of you in Southern California. That's a big issue. Operating in California, we all know, is itself a challenge, and the various policy that you have there. So there have been all of these sort of macro factors. And then if I look at 2026, the general sense of things we get from folks is don't expect things to get much better economically speaking. There's still gonna be a lot of uncertainty. Perhaps things have bottomed out. Maybe there's a little bit of optimism for some small growth. But it's, what you guys, I can appreciate that what you guys have faced as part of what we've all faced, but also what you uniquely face in Southern California has been really, really tough. And so I'm curious for your perspective on, making bold moves and sort of where it's necessary, because you guys are kind of taking it on the chin left and right, and you're still standing. And how much is that because you're willing to make these bold moves to move the business forward?
California I mean, I think, like, I heard it for the first time in 2015 when I knew nothing about the restaurant industry. Really, someone said, if you can make it in California, you can make it anywhere. And that was 10 years ago. And that that has only been amplified and become, exponentially more true. The environment is really hard here. Anyone who tells you differently is either has an outlier of a business or is just not telling the truth. The cost of doing business, rents are extremely expensive. I mean, I don't need to get into all of it, but it's driven by costs. It's driven by a litigious sort of system that we have in California. So it makes it hard. Ultimately, if you don't innovate and you don't change, then you will not grow. And if you do not grow, you will fail. I mean, that's what ultimately happens. It's very simple. You used a word, I think, bold, or maybe that's something that I've been thinking about, because when we talked about this change and this evolution, the idea of being bold was important. Let's not just add a menu item or two menu items. Let's be bold in the way we're communicating. Let's be bold in the evolution. Let's take the risk, because you have to swing the bat. You have to be educated, and you have to sort of step up to the plate in a smart, intelligent way, backed by facts and grounded in data. But at the end of the day, as entrepreneurs, you have to swing, and sometimes you'll swing and you'll miss, and that's life. Or sometimes you'll hit a home run. We wanted just to go for it and really do something that was unique and different, because it very much feels like sort of 2015 for us. We were the pioneers in a category that didn't exist, and that was a swing. Trying to get a landlord to the origin story, trying to get a landlord to accept us as a tenant with little operating experience in a category that they had no idea what it was, that didn't exist. That was a challenge in itself, and we took the swing, and we did well. Now this is the next evolution of being bold, and we feel like the P mix, the differentiation of the menu really stands out in a very crowded, noisy market that's not just driven by fast casual, but it's driven by all restaurants and just a noisy environment in general. And so this is the swing we needed to take. It's a bold swing, but it's sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah. All right, Seth, last question for you. Of course, setting that table to say that things are bleak in a lot of ways for a lot of people, for this whole industry. And, not maybe bleak's the wrong word. That's kind of strong, because I think one of my favorite things about the restaurant industry is how optimistic we tend to be, because this is the most universal human industry there is. We see the best of it, but still, it's tough. What are you excited about? Obviously, I'm sure you're excited about the rollout of this menu, but what else gets you excited about Sweetfin or the restaurant industry, for the coming years?
I mean, a few things. I mean, Sweetfin, going back to what I said a few minutes ago, is I'm looking at this menu, and I'm looking at what else is out there, and I'm tasting, and I'm eating it almost every day, and I'm not getting sick of it, and I'm craving it, and I'm just thinking about, wow, I think we have something here. And I think we have something here that can exist outside of our backyard. And for a while, speaking transparently, I wasn't sure if that was the case with our menu. We didn't, despite the fact that I felt like we had a differentiated brand. We worked with great, collaborators. Our design was a little bit better. I think our service model was a little bit better. All of the, little things. I wasn't sure if, Austin, Texas, or Dallas, or New York City, or Miami needed another Poké concept.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. But I do believe the combination of the existing menu plus the new items really has created a well-rounded concept that makes a lot of sense, that sells California. The flavor profile is incredible. The food is delicious. It just really feels like we're onto something that can be big, and it can exist in other markets. And that, for the first time in a while, I'm very confident to say that's what I believe will be the reality of the situation.
Well, it's exciting to see, Seth. Really excited to see where this all can go for you and for Sweetfin. Thanks again for your time today. Excited to watch it all unfold in the coming year.
Awesome. Thanks for having me again, Sam.
That was my interview with Sweetfin co-founder Seth Cohen. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that your menu needs to evolve every once in a while, sometimes in a big way. This is a big evolution for Sweetfin. Of course, this is a Poké brand that a decade ago when it opened really embraced that Poké trend. And as Seth explained, Poké is still important and still popular and still certainly growing, but it's kind of settled into that niche. And the Sweetfin leaders really realized that they needed new customers, but they especially needed to drive customer frequency. And not everybody was coming in for raw fish all the time. That's why they felt like a big evolution was necessary. But Seth says, this is really just part and parcel of running a restaurant company. Sometimes you need to evolve. He says it's not a pivot, it's an evolution. And I think that's probably true for most restaurants who go through something like this. But I think this lesson here, this takeaway is actually for those of you who are too scared to evolve your menu, too scared to change things up. Even if you feel like it's not broke, so why fix it? Sometimes you really do have to make even small changes to bring your menu into the future, because your guests will start to notice if things feel stale or outdated or unexciting. The other thing is, again, in this case, Sweetfin really feels like they can drive guest frequency. Seth is hoping that they can increase their guest frequency by 30% and potentially along the way gain some new customers. If that is the result of all of this, then certainly that menu evolution was well worth it. My second takeaway is that the era of extremely focused menus may be over. This is really interesting because we watched that trend probably about a decade ago, around the time Sweetfin opened up. There was a school of thought that your menu really needed to be focused. It should not be everything to all people. And instead, by being focused, you become sort of that one poke place or that one sandwich place or salad place that people go to, and they kind of give their it's a lifestyle identity that customers sort of relate with. That was the theory. Not to mention, it's going to save you on overhead, it's going to save you on the food costs. It's helpful to have a focused menu because it's a lot less complex. Well, Seth pointed out in the interview, he said, you look at Sweetgreen, you look at Cava, you look at Mendocino Farms. Those were a couple of fast casual brands that, they've been hot for the last decade, certainly part of this rise in fast casual concepts that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years. All of them starting with a focused menu, and all of them starting to expand in the past couple of years. And the reason why, of course, Seth said, is that the competition has become so fierce. There are just so many fast casuals out there. There are so many restaurants out there. There's even grocery to contend with, as Seth pointed out. And when you have so much competition, you have to do some new things to get the attention of the customer and get them to check out your restaurant and become a loyal guest. In this case, that means expanding the menu out from that very focused core menu. This is what Sweetfin is doing now. They were very focused on Poké, and with that laser focus, they were successful for a long time. But now they feel like in this competitive state, and again, to unlock some new growth, they have to widen that aperture. They have to develop some new menu items that are going to get the attention of more guests. I love when Seth said, customers today, he said they want more flexibility in what they're eating. They're not going to be so single-minded on poke sandwiches or salads or whatever that focus might be at your restaurant, and what that focused menu might be. They want some options. They want some flexibility. And again, it's going to really help when you might get your guests to come in on every Monday before. Maybe now they're going to come in every Monday and Thursday because you've got new menu items that they're going to check out. My third takeaway is that your menu must have a point of view. I thought this was a really interesting idea that Seth presented around this concept of having a point of view, having a personality, a perspective. And he used the example of, for Sweetfin, they were always a gluten-free concept, and they wanted to continue to be a gluten-free concept. They were always California and Asian inspired, and they wanted to continue to be California and Asian inspired. And those perspectives, as he called them, they helped to really give Sweetfin identity and really helped to steer the evolution that they've gone through recently, so that they're not losing the perspective. Regular guests of Sweetfin are going to recognize it for what it is. They're going to see that this is the same old Sweetfin that they fell in love with and continue to visit because it's maintained that same perspective. It's just an interesting way to think about, your concept and your menu, the theme of your menu. What kind of personality does it have? What kind of perspective does it have? What is it trying to say? You really need to hold on to those things because that's going to be what your guests really hooks into. My fourth takeaway is that related to that, all brand evolution must be filtered through your core values. So similarly, as Sweetfin's gone through this evolution, Seth said, again, using that gluten-free example, being gluten-free, that was something that was very much a part of Sweetfin's core values that they did not want to lose. And so that was one example of when they said, okay, we're going to change, we're going to evolve the menu. Here are our non-negotiables. Here are the core values we will always stand for. Anything that comes in this evolution must be filtered through these core values, through these non-negotiables, and what comes out on the other side must hold on to those core values very dearly. Values are so important to any business, especially in the restaurant industry. Customers can see your values at play. They want to see what you stand for, what you believe in, and your menu has an opportunity to represent that. So if you're going to go through your own menu evolution, just make sure you're not letting go of some of those core values, because again, it's going to help to really focus your attention on what, where you're going with that evolution. It's going to really help to protect your brand identity, but it's also going to ensure that your guests, you don't lose them in the process of that evolution. My fifth and final takeaway is that to be successful, you have to make bold decisions. Seth said, you have to swing for the fences. Sometimes you're going to miss, but you've got to swing. I love that because it's so true of any business. In order to be successful, you're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to make some scary decisions. You're going to have to be bold. But for every swing and a miss, you have a home run or even a single or a double that moves your business forward. By being bold, your business can move forward. If you're too afraid to swing the bat and you're hoping for a bunch of walks, you're in the wrong business. So think about how you can be bold at your own restaurant. Think about how you can swing for the fences. And, you may miss, but at least you can try. And through trying, you'll certainly learn. You'll learn how to swing maybe a little bit different. You'll adjust the bat on the next one. And the next one might be that home run that your business really needs. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again and talk to you next week.